What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review the 2008 mixtape by T-Pain. Basically, this project is called Pree Ringz, and it came out in the late summer of 2008. Now, the thing about this particular project is just the fact that T-Pain had an album that was getting ready to come out in late 2008 called Pree Ringz, which was this was a pretty hit album here. Had a number of smashes on it, like Freeze and Chopped and Screwed and some of those type ones, and Can't Believe It, some of those particular type pitches. T-Pain was definitely on top of the world throughout 2008 as far as that pitch kind of particularly happened. He was just getting hooks left and right and cameo features and stuff like that. But particularly, I don't remember this project as much. I wanted to fuck with it just because originally I was going to review this in October instead of Rappaturnt Sanga that came out in early November, which I reviewed in October. But I wanted to get to this one just because I wanted the quality of it. I wanted to get some more T-Pain reviews up and stuff like that. But this is definitely a particularly pretty solid pitch here. It's not a perfect project, but it has enough on here. The unfortunate thing about this particular project is T-Pain mostly raps on this particular project more so than has like his auto-tune hooks and stuff like that. I was kind of hoping for a few more R&B type auto-tune type numbers on here, stuff like Can't Believe It and some of those type ones. But it seems like he saved most of his R&B type numbers for like his albums as far as that pitch can happens. Now he does do that later on. There is a mixtape called Stoic where he has some R&B type numbers on there. And there is definitely a lot of glossarized type stuff on here. There is definitely some nightclub bounce and some dance tunes as far as that pitch can happen. It just doesn't have the typical hookiness of T-Pain, which is interesting because T-Pain has always been like a golden, because T-Pain has always had the Midas touch when it comes to hooks. A lot of these are just more of like rap chants and stuff like that, just typical, more standard fare of rap music, which I don't appreciate as full blown, I'd have to suppose. I do like the concept of T-Pain rapping. He is a competent lyricist as far as that particular pitch. As far as that particular pitch kind of happens, it's just kind of a disappointment because I would have figured that this would have been like a preemptive kind of I would have figured that this would have been like a preemptive kind of bonus package to like Pree Ringz, which was damn near a classic album as well. I'd have to say Epiphany was really good. Rappaturnt Sanga was a classic. I reviewed that and gave that a 10 out of 10. I want to say that Pree Ringz was pretty damn well good album, I suppose. Definitely some pitch T-Pain. But then after about late 2008, T-Pain kind of expired in 2009 between like Jay-Z dropping like the Death of Autotune song in the summer of 2009 and pitches like that. T-Pain was just not nearly as popular and like from like the spring of 2009 forward to about like way out in 2011 when he dropped Revolver. It just kind of felt like those were some bad times for T-Pain. Now he was definitely around. He did drop like the Freaknik the musical album, which I reviewed back in 2022. He did have some good stuff. He also dropped Pre-Volver the mixtape in early 2011, I'd have to suppose. But it's just kind of the concept that this particular project is solid. It definitely has some solid stuff on here. Definitely a good assortment of like nightclub bops and things like that on here. But there's a couple problems. Just one of which is just the fact that the Dat Piff, not that Dat Piff is still around, but the Dat Piff version, this scraps 3 songs from this particular project, so you have to find a different mixtape to get some of these, which would be the 3 songs Dig That, I'm a Freak, and Ain't No Love, I'd have to suppose, which is kind of a disappointment because some of those songs are pretty good, I'd have to say. But then on top of that, it just is not as hooky and melodic as it needs to be. If you're looking for like vintage T-Pain, if you come to T-Pain with songs like, if you're a fan of songs by T-Pain like Bartender, if you're a fan of songs by T-Pain like Bartender, Buy You a Drink, some of those type ones, Can You Believe It, Free, some of those type pitches, it's not quite as hooky and melodic as some of those type pitches. But I would have to say some good T-Pain. It's just a more rap-oriented type T-Pain as far as that pitch can happen. Now, some of these are some nightclub bops and bounces on here. There is some R&B on here in like mild amounts, but it's just kind of the concept. It's just a different pitch and variation where this feels more like a vintage kind of rap mixtape from like the late 2000s, more so than like the typical kind of fanfare that you're known for. If you're looking for vintage T-Pain, it's probably on here about maybe 20, 25, 30% of the time as opposed to the vast majority of the time. It's just a different pitch. A lot of this is just pretty much hardcore rap. And there are some guests on here. There's this cat, Young Cash, who's on here a number of times. I think he was signed to Nappy Boy Entertainment at the time, so it's a pretty good pitch. I'm going to have to check out some of his projects if he has some. And then Tay Dism's on here a couple of times. I would have to say I'm going to have to check out more of his projects because I reviewed one of his mixtapes back in 2022. Pretty good project there. I would have to recommend that one. T-Pain's on that project a number of times, and they both do an excellent job on Tay Dism's particular mixtape. I'd have to suppose was a dope concept. So basically, there's 21 songs on this particular mixtape, and out of those 21, I wound up recommending to you 12. So it's a dope enough concept. I don't know if there's like a single from this, but I would have to say this is a pretty low-key project here. I'd have to suppose there's not a ton of real like critic reviews of this. I saw something that like Rap Reviews did way back in 2008, rapreviews.com, but I had to suppose apart from that, there's not a ton of real professional or critic reviews of this particular project. So I definitely want to get this out here because it is some quality on here. There's definitely some gems on here. 12 out of 21 songs I wound up recommending. That's a little bit more than half, I'd have to say. So it's a pretty good pitch to get some of these in particular. It's just the fact that the typical kind of T-Pain strengths are not on here in spades as far as that pitch can have with it. So that's just kind of the concept. But the 12 songs I recommend on here would be What You Need, I Know, Like I Oughta, Don't Stop the Party, Freakin', This That Shit, Got to Go, Ain't No Love, Up and Down, I'm Mad, I'm a Freak, and We Got Love. So talk about some of these, like the particular talk about some of these ones that have the R&B type T-Pain type pitch. If you do miss that auto-tune type pitch from T-Pain, I would say Got to Go is a nice one for that, and then We Got Love is a nice one. This is very minimal on here. Just not many songs that kind of particularly have that pitch. There is another one that has a little bit of R&B on there, which is the song I Know. That one kind of has some of that pitch, but basically Got to Go is a pretty highlighted one. This is definitely like a nice evening malaise lounging of a song, I'd have to say. Definitely appreciate this particular song quite a bit. This is like classic T-Pain, I would feel like, and this is just this song just has a classic T-Pain type feel, I would have to say, and this is just some hooky and this song is just some hooky and overall quality R&B, I'd have to suppose. So it's a pretty good pitch to get that one in particular. Definitely some vintage kind of T-Pain R&B type pitch as far as that particularly goes along with it. Just a nice highlighted one. The thing about this particular mixtape is there's a lot of lounge music on here. It's just interesting that T-Pain was kind of like a lounge lizard on this particular project, hanging out near a bar or a bartender, some stuff like that. Just that typical kind of lounge fare, just getting like some drinks and stuff like that, getting like some shots, those sorts of pitches, just kind of hanging out and just kind of being a lounge lizard, basically. I'd say some of that concept, whether it's at a hotel or something like that, just some place where there'd be drinks served and things like that. It's just an interesting kind of pitch because I do like some of these. It's definitely a pretty affable R&B type concept to have some of this lounge type music, because not every R&B artist kind of has these lounge type songs, but T-Pain has a number of them on here. There's songs like Don't Stop the Party, that's a lounge type song. We Got Love is a lounge type song. I would say Got to Go is kind of similar to that. I'd say there's just some good ones on here with that particular type pitch as far as that particular kind of happens with it. Just some good stuff. So We Got Love is another highlighted one. This is just a vintage T-Pain type crooning as far as that pitch kind of happens with auto-tune, as far as that particularly kind of happens. This is like a lounge-like, the song is like a lounge-like kind of hangout gem, I would have to say. This is like classic T-Pain once again. The melodies vibe real well with this particular song, I'd have to say, and this is just some overall smooth kind of 2000s R&B, I'd have to suppose. So if you do miss like Epiphany vibes and Pree Ringz vibes from T-Pain, this particular song has that, and this particular song We Got Love has that in a pretty good amount, I'd have to say. It's a relatively brief song. It's only like 2 minutes 40 seconds, but it's still a pretty highlighted one, I'd have to suppose. Up and Down is a pretty highlighted one. This is another R&B type song. This one has the rapping on there, but it's still a pretty good concept to get this one in particular. This one just feels like a nice power ballad, I'd have to say. This is just some nice power ballad R&B, I would have to say. It's an unexpected take, and this is kind of an unexpected take for T-Pain, I would have to say, and this is just some old school R&B this song is just some old school R&B with like some new T-Pain flavor, I would have to suppose. So it's a pretty good concept to get this one in particular. Definitely appreciate this one. This is more of like a typical kind of 90s R&B type feel, just something that would have been like a power ballad or something like that. Just a more typical kind of power bedroom boom type stuff as far as that pitch kind of has with it. Definitely reminds me of like Pillow Talk by Zayn. I think that's the name of that song from 2016. Zayn, something like that. The dude that came out with Pillow Talk back in 2016. Now obviously this song came out 8 years before that, but still pretty good pitch to get some of this power ballad type stuff, just some bedroom boom type pitch as far as that particular kind of happens with it. Just a good R&B type take for just like some power R&B, or just like some power R&B, I would have to say. Pretty good concept for that. But once again, this is kind of like a halfway rap, halfway R&B type song, but I definitely Up and Down is like a halfway rap, halfway R&B type pitch, but I definitely appreciate this one in particular just because I do like some of the R&B type blend of this particular one. This works pretty well. I'm Mad is a pretty nice one. This is like an energized kind of Aggie noise nightclub fun of a song, I would have to say. This is kind of like a song. I'm Mad is kind of like some energized kind of Aggie noise, I would have to say. And by Aggie, I mean aggravated, just that particular pitch behind it. This is like some nightclub fun with like middle fingers up, I would definitely have to say. And this song is just some nightclub fun with middle fingers up kind of energy, I would have to suppose. And this is just a pretty boppish song, I would overall have to say. So it's a pretty good concept to get this one in particular. Definitely some of the type stuff. Like T-Pain did a song like this called Church off of Epiphany. It was a pretty good highlight to get that one in particular. It's just a good concept when you're kind of in a more kind of ornery type mood or something like that. Just kind of a ruffled kind of day, something like that. Just feathers out of line or something like that within that particular pitch. It's a good highlighted one. It's kind of release some stress and some stuff like that as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Just a nice one. This is a nightclub song, a decent kind of dance club type bop as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. There's a number of nightclub songs on here. It's just the fact this one's not quite as hooky and melodic, but it does have a good concept of just releasing some stress and some things like that, I'd have to say. Like I Oughta is a pretty clever one. This is a good pitch to kind of get. I do appreciate this song. It's like a glitzy kind of night venue jazz of a song, I'd have to say. But on top of that, the impressions on this particular song are pretty spot on, I'd have to say. T-Pain does like Soulja Boy and E40, Shawty Lo, Jeezy, Rick Ross, Lil Wayne, some of those type folks. He does pretty spot on impressions of these particular folks. So it's a pretty clever and original song to get that one, I would definitely have to say. And this is a good kind of smoke a few cut, I would definitely feel like. So I definitely appreciate this particular pitch of this one. Just a real nice jazzy kind of glitzy night venue type hit. Just a real nice jazzy kind of glitzy night venue hit, I'd have to suppose. Pretty nice one for that. I'm a Freak, one of the songs that's not on the Dat Piff edition, is a pretty highlighted one. This is like a jazzy kind of R&B bop, I would have to say. It's like a good vanilla dance club energy that this song particularly kind of has, and this is just some regular evening fare, I would have to suppose, and it's pretty catchy. So this is definitely one. I don't know if this was Young Cash's song originally. It says that it's Young Cash featuring T-Pain, but I'd have to say either way, it's a catchy type song. It's the typical kind of 2000s R&B type pitch that just has that. It just feels like a vanilla kind of nightclub and dance club type bop to kind of get. So this is a pretty nice one. I would also have to say that Ain't No Love is a pretty highlighted one. Definitely appreciate this one. This is like some solid kind of evening malaise, I would have to say. This is like some day after hours kind of wind down type music, I would have to say. Definitely a pretty good concept. Get that one in particular. And this is just kind of an in-between cut to kind of post up with, I'd have to suppose. If you're just kind of posting in your car, in your driveway, some stuff like that, just kind of typical kind of wind down type music, just grilling burgers in the backyard, some of those type pitches, just in between type stuff, smoking a swisher, something like that. It's not quite ready, maybe not going out to a nightclub, but also not at work, just within that pitch as far as that particularly kind of happens. Just some good in-between type stuff to just kind of have for like some standard kind of evening malaise. I mean, T-Pain doesn't always do songs like this, so it's an interesting type one. I don't know why this wasn't on the Dat Piff version of the mixtape, I'd have to say, because I don't know why this wasn't on the Dat Piff version of the mixtape, because it's a pretty solid song. So I would definitely recommend getting like the full version of this particular mixtape, because there are at least 3 songs on this mixtape on the Dat Piff version that aren't available. So I would have to say just get the full version, because you'll definitely appreciate it. Even though I don't recommend Dig That, I still would have to say that there's some nice ones on here for some of the songs that they kind of act. So it's a pretty good concept for that. That Shit's a pretty highlighted one. This is definitely a pretty poundy nightclub type song. This is definitely a pretty poundy nightclub song, I would have to say. This like a jazzy kind of nightclub bounce that this song particularly kind of has. This song is a lively dance bop, I would have to say, and it's just some vintage T-Pain, I would have to feel like, and it's just some evening, and it's just kind of an evening fun hit, I would have to suppose. So it's definitely a pretty highlighted one. That Shit has one of the best beats on this particular mixtape, I'd have to suppose. Just a real immediate type one, just for some jazzy kind of nightclub, just overall fair and just overall lively bounce just within that particular pitch as far as that particular kind of happens. It's just too bad that it doesn't have like a typical kind of T-Pain melodic type hook, I'd have to say. That probably would have been the icing on the cake, but it's still a pretty highlight song. This is definitely one that you need to go to pretty quickly. Another one that's in that immediate kind of style would be Freakin'. This is one that I go back with. I remember this song from a ways back when I remember this song from a ways back, I'd have to suppose. It's a pretty nice one. This is like a lively kind of house party and night venue haze of a song, I'd have to say. Gorilla Zoe's on this song and Young Cash is on here. It's a pretty good concept. Or Tay Dizzum's on this particular song, so it's a dope enough song to get that particular pitch, and this is a definite Kickstarter and dance craze of a song, I'd have to say. So this one definitely gets the booty shaking. Freakin' definitely gets the booty shaking on this particular song. It's just an overall highlighted type pitch and just one of the most boppish type ones on this particular mixtape. Now there are, like I've been saying, there's a number of nightclub bops on here. Songs like Freakin', songs like That Shit, songs like I'm Mad, some of these particular type ones I'd have to suppose. There are some decent kind of bops on here within that particular pitch, but there's some lounging songs also, but it's just kind of the concept that it just has some good nightclub type energy that T-Pain really didn't do that much on Pree Ringz. I mean, he had more kind of lounge and drinking type songs when you think of songs like Can You Believe It and some of those type ones, and the song he did with Ciara and the song he did with T-Pain, and the song he did with T.I., like It Ain't Me, and some of those type ones. But I'd have to say, in terms of like a standard kind of nightclub bop of something like Usher's Yeah or Sierra's Goodies or one of those type pitches that just feels like a crunk type tune, this is actually some good T-Pain to kind of get within. That particular pitch, because the R&B type songs that T-Pain puts out are usually more melodic and for the ladies, I'd have to suppose. But this is kind of like some crunchy. These mixtape kind of nightclub songs are like some crunchy kind of smoke a few type cuts just for some like some dance crazes and stuff like that. So it's a pretty good concept for that in particular, I'd have to say. Don't Stop the Party's another highlighted one. Definitely appreciate this one. This is definitely like a lounge lizard kind of bar schmoozing of a song, I'd have to say. Pretty good concept for that in particular. This is like a gentle kind of relaxed kickback type song, I'd have to say, and this song just overall has a pretty catchy vibe. So this one's a pretty nice one. There's another one that goes well with like Like I would say like We Got Love and some of those type pitches, just some of those particular type ones. I'm a Freak is another good highlighted one for that particular sense. Like I was saying, some of these lounge type songs really hit the nail on the head. They're just pretty effective and just have like an extra aura of T-Pain that works pretty well. This is another strength for T-Pain, I'd have to say. So this is a definite nice one. It's kind of mingling with the bartender, stuff like that, getting some drinks, just getting some shots in your system, getting ready to go back out to the dance floor and have a good time, some pitches like that, I'd have to say. There's two songs I don't remember if I talked about in particular, so I'm just going to go ahead and talk about some of these. But What You Need is one of which I don't remember if I talked about. This is a pretty highlighted one. This is definitely like a revved up kind of initial turn up noise of a song, I'd have to say. This song has some hype vibes that work well, I would definitely have to say. And it's just a dope concept. Get that one in particular. And this is just a get cranked. And this is definitely kind of a get cranked kind of song, I'd have to suppose. Definite concept to get pretty fucked up to and some stuff like that. Get some drinks in your system, just kind of get revved and having a just kind of get revved and have a pretty crazed and carnivorous type time, I'd have to suppose. Pretty nice highlight one to get that one in particular. And then once again, I don't know if I talked about I Know, but I'll go ahead and talk about this one again. This is like a peppy kind of R&B residential lounging type song, I'd have to say. Pretty dope feeling for that particular one. This is like a decent kind of in between night venue cut, I'd have to say, and this is just an overall breezy type bop. So this is definitely one that reminds me of like some R&B type malaise just within that particular pitch. Very similar to I'm a Freak. Pretty good concept to kind of have with Up and Down, some of those type ones. Got to Go and We Got Love, some of those type pitches. So there is some there are kind of some R&B type blends on this particular mixtape. It's just kind of in a more milder and minimalist kind of sense, I'd have to suppose, which is not too unfortunate. I'd have to say this is a quality enough mixtape, I'd have to suppose. For the most part, it definitely delivers for a good chunk of the time. It's just kind of the concept that if you do miss some of T-Pain's wildest strengths, it just doesn't have that in full-blown spades, I'd have to suppose. So that's just the basic concept about this particular mixtape. So to talk about some of the songs I don't recommend on here, basically there's just a lot of poor instrumentals on here that are just kind of more rap heavy type ones, just more hardcore rap type stuff that just doesn't really feel like vintage T-Pain at all, or something that he really should be. I mean, I realize that T-Pain was initially a rapper and some of that type of stuff, but it's just not quite as convincing with him being kind of like a hardcore rapper trying to do that mixtape type fare and trying to spit bars like Lil Wayne and 2 Chainz and folks like that, some of those type folks that are full-blown lyricists. I just kind of feel like he should kind of blend some of the styles that he has with like, I definitely feel like he should blend some of his strengths that he has in like the commercial markets with some of these type more bar heavy type songs and lyricism. I would have to suppose. There's just some kind of clumsy ones on here, like the intro and Cocky were just songs like the intro and Cocky were just kind of clumsy type hardcore rap type songs that just didn't really have that much compelling edge towards them. It was the same thing with Reborn. That one was just not that interesting of a listen. Superman was just kind of a clumsy type one that didn't really have much. Superman was just kind of a clumsy type one that didn't have much poignancy towards it, I'd have to say. Same thing with Nappy Boy or Die. Some of these type ones were just kind of hardcore rap type songs that just don't feel like T-Pain in like the typical kind of sense that he needs to kind of be in, I would have to suppose. Some of these are just kind of ones. It's kind of felt like a typical kind of blasé type rapper. And I mean, T-Pain is not like a poor lyricist. It's just kind of the concept that he's just not as convincing as like a hardcore type rapper, I'd have to suppose. This kind of concept about it. Songs like Let's Go, some of these type ones, The Truth were just kind of some poor type ones. Now, actually, The Truth was just kind of songs like Let's Go and The Truth were just kind of some poor type ones. Dig That. Dig That was kind of like some moody rap, I'd have to suppose. I almost would have appreciated that one, but I just couldn't get. I almost would have appreciated that one, but I just couldn't get into the vibe enough to really appreciate it in terms of like standard kind of moody type rap or emo type rap as far as that pitch. I mean, it's not like it's an emo rap type song, but just some of that typical kind of more ruminating type sense for just something that's a little bit of paranoia and just moodiness and things like that. That one was just not quite as compelling. Is what I'd say. So there's just some ones on here that just kind of have like some clumsy kind of hardcore rap type feels that just don't really have the affability towards it. I definitely think T-Pain should have sprinkled on a lot more than just like the occasional R&B type hook and R&B type song and some more, just songs like that. I feel like there should have been like a miniature version of like songs like Bartender and some of those type ones and Buy You a Drink, some of those type ones. There should have been like a song on here called like Tequila or Taking Shots, something like that sort of pitch that Lil Jon was kind of doing. It's taking advantage of some of the concepts of just having like some free songs for like some bar hopping and things like that, like he was typically known for on his albums. I just feel like some of those strengths were just not exploited like they needed to be, and especially for this project. I mean, there are some nightclub songs on here, there is some bounce, and there are some bar hopping type tunes and definitely some lounge tunes, but I kind of feel like out of 21 songs, I definitely feel like because I favored T-Pain as much as I do, that I should be recommending to you more than 12 songs out of 21. That's just kind of, I mean, for a normal musician, someone like that, I'd say that this might be state of the art as far as that pitch kind of particularly happens. But for T-Pain, which I typically usually like 80, 70, a good chunk of his particular songs, 12 out of 21 is just not that acceptable, I'd have to suppose. So that's just kind of the concept about it. But so me recommending 12 songs out of 21 on this particular mixtape, I'm gonna go ahead and give this mixtape like a 6.75 out of 10. Like I said, there's strengths on here. There is some mild R&B kind of sprinkled in. There's some stuff like that, some lounge type songs, some nightclub songs, some bounce, some stuff like that. Even a couple like Malays kind of hazers, just overall that type pitch, just some ladies hangout type songs, some stuff like that. I'd have to suppose pretty good concept. We get a lot of these, just a good chunk. I mean, at least 12, and especially if you can find the edition that has like the songs that Dat Piff kind of scrapped off here, I'd say that that's a pretty dope concept, because that's definitely 2 songs at least that I recommend also. So it would really only be like 10 songs out of 21 if we're counting like the Dat Piff edition. But still, it's a dope enough concept to get 12 out of 21. 6.75 out of 10. The social score, I'm going to go ahead and give like a 7.75 to, because I feel like there's enough quality on here to really recommend that particular pitch. It's a good, I mean, there's an above fair amount of T-Pain strengths on this particular project, but it just feels like a bite-sized version of the stuff that he did on his albums, which is fine because this project is free and stuff like that. But it's just kind of the particular concept as far as trying to say that there definitely needed to be, like I was saying, some kind of drink type songs to kind of have like some crunk type moments with like some good melodic kind of R&B type hooks like Bartender and some stuff like that. Just need to be some miniature songs like that. More auto tune on this particular project, some of those type pitches. But this is a pretty social album, I'd have to say. Definitely pretty social type fare. Has some good gems on here. Definitely good enough to recommend. It may not be full blown immediate with every single one, but there's definitely songs like Freakin' and This That Shit and I'm a Freak and some of those type ones, and a couple other ones like there's a couple other immediate ones like I would have to say like What You Need, some of those type ones. I just would have to suppose to have that particular concept of a pitch. That's just kind of the concept. So 7.75 social. In terms of the future, like T-Pain put out a covers album in the spring of 2023 called On Top of the Covers or something like that. I would have to suppose it's a pretty dope concept. Get that one in particular. Now I'm not as familiar with every single song that he covered off that particular project, but I'm definitely going to get this more T-Pain projects like Epiphany and Three Rings, some of those type ones, and possibly even some of his mixtapes like Pre-Volver and Stoic and some of those type ones. I'd have to suppose. Some of his mixtapes like Pre-Volver and Stoic, I'd have to suppose, but it's just a dope enough concept. So I'd have to say I do recommend this project quite a bit. I'd have to say definitely has some nightclub bops on here and some vintage T-Pain kind of here and there just within that particular pitch. It's above decent. I'd have to say it's just a little bit above decent. It's kind of somewhat haphazard, but I still recommend it enough to say that it is a free project worth checking out, because it does have a good chunk, more than approximately a dozen gems on there that are worth some good nightclub and just overall stepping out and just evening kind of haze type fare, I'd have to say.